I'm Rodney Paul. This is Baytrail Confidential. Still not, okay, it is exactly 7:30. So welcome everybody. And we've got kind of a jam-packed show here for you guys. But first, we've got the poll going. I'll give you guys another minute to complete that, telling us where you're connecting from. I am joined by my regular co-host, Lee Huo. Lee, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Rodney. I'm excited about today's show to talk about the Reber Plan. To me,
Yeah.
you just kind of got to remember your history to remember why we do what we do today, right?
Yep, we're gonna get some great information on that. We are brought to you by San Francisco City Guides, which is a nonprofit that's been taking people on tours of San Francisco since the late 1970s, and we are really very much back in action. In fact, I was doing wasn't for them, but I was doing a tour yesterday south of Market, and I was kind of upstaged by this dude climbing up the Salesforce Tower. So kind of interesting stuff. I see someone has a hand raised. If you could put your question in the chat, that would be good, because I do keep you guys muted. We have show notes for today's show, and I'm going to try to type that, if I get a second, into chat, because that's going to have links to some of the things we're talking about, including the Road to a Livable Climate event coming up in June. We'll talk about that. Here is our order of the show. We're going to have some updates on things happening on the Bay Trail. We're going to talk about what Lee just mentioned, the Reber Plan, which was an extremely terrible idea that actually might have done things to help save the Bay. We're going to talk about the Corte Madera Marsh, great place to visit, the 350 Bay Area event, Road to a Livable Climate, which is both walking and biking. The Abode Expedition, which is actually not a historic expedition, but something that's going to be making history in almost next week, actually, a week from tomorrow. And then at the very end, we'll have your comments and questions. We'll let you guys unmute. But here are my guests. So I'm joined by Larry Rosenblum from Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. How are you tonight, Larry?
I'm fine. Thank you, Rodney.
And Mark Freiberg, who is going to be part of the Abode Expedition. How are you, Mark?
Doing great, thanks.
And Tom Lent, who is both a volunteer with Walk Bike Berkeley, and he has involvement with 350 Bay Area, and he's doing the Abode Expedition.
And they all fit together.
I don't know where you find the time. Linda Brown, who is a volunteer with 350 Bay Area. How are you tonight, Linda?
I'm great. So glad to be here.
And one of the organizers of this event that we'll be talking about, and her your co-organizer, Mary Ann Furta from 350 Bay Area. How are you tonight, Mary Ann?
Good evening. Delighted to be here. I've seen your shows and it's a delight to be a part of one.
Yeah, we had you in the green room, and kind of when you mentioned like the sausage being made, it's kind of fun to be behind the scenes. I'm going to share the poll. But we are seeing that we have folks from around the Bay Area, which is always a great thing, because that was always our goal, was to bring people together from different parts and to encourage them to explore, if you're in the East Bay, to explore, the peninsula, the North Bay. If you're in the South Bay, go up to San Francisco. So that was always our intent. We have lots of people who like hiking and walking, and some bicyclists, not as many. By the way, the guests are not able to vote in the poll. They're disenfranchised. I'm not sure why Zoom does that. We've got one person who says they're a birder, but we're going to show you a place that has fabulous birding. I asked about Bayview Hunters Point, because that's what we talked about in the last show. And a lot of you have been to a lot of these places, maybe more than last time. So maybe some of you did that since the last show. And we hope you continue visiting places on the Bay Trail. And on that subject, we have our Bay Trail cred maps for many of our guests. So Mark, this is yours. You live in Tiburon, and you've really seen a lot in the North Bay. But
yeah, I guess I'm a North Bay kind of guy. I lived in the East Bay prior to that, and that kind of shows up too.
Well, we'll have to encourage you to explore some places in the South Bay. In fact, the Abode Expedition is going to be going down there. Tom, you've been almost everywhere.
Yeah, it's a great bay, and I strongly encourage you, Mark, to check out the South Bay. Some of those long stretches
Yeah.
without any road traffic crossing and lots of birding, and just being able to go for a lot of stretches quite away from all the press of civilization that's nearby. It's a real joy down there.
But we're going to be adding to your North Bay cred, Tom, when you do the abode
Right.
expedition. We'll be going. We're going to be going to Petaluma, which doesn't look like it's on the Bay Trail, but since no one in their right mind is going to bike on Highway 37, I do consider it part of the Bay Trail. Marianne, you have very extensive. In effect, I don't think I've captured everything, right? This is incomplete.
That's pretty much, but it doesn't count what is on the water because I'm a sea kayaker as well.
And you're part of that whole group, which I think we need to do another water trail show that
Yep.
needs to happen sometime soon. And then Larry, you're back with the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. And you just kind of you've been here and there. You've been at all kinds of different places.
Yes, I have.
And then Lee is not added to his Bay Trail cred in the last month, but one of these days, Lee, we're gonna have to kidnap you or something.
I know I do need to get out of the office more.
And then
Yeah, there's a really nice trail out there. You should try it out.
and here's mine. And I've actually already done what I considered to be 100%, except it's kind of a lie because I keep finding new places that I haven't been to, including the one I'll be talking about today, the Corte Madera Marsh. But let's first do some Bay Trail updates, and then we'll get into our topics. I just want to mention some new stuff that's really cool. And talking about the Corte Madera Marsh, well, there's this new bridge that goes over Corte Madera Creek on the east side. There's actually another one on the west side, so kind of like way over here. There's a different one, but this one's really useful because it gets you to the Corte Madera Marsh. It gets you to the Paradise Loop. It's really close to the ferry terminal, and it's going to be great for both cyclists and walkers. And so here's this is the one on the east side, but the new one is going right through here. It seems like it's open, but it's kind of still got some construction going on, so it's narrow, but that will be changing. And this is an artist rendition. I couldn't find any actual photographs of what it looks like now, but it's very nice. But here's another new one that I learned about from the Road to a Livable Climate folks, because it's part of one of their routes. There's a new bike trail connecting areas near the Napa airport with American Canyon. And before this, you really had to go on Highway 29, a stretch, which is really not fun. It's really fast traffic. It's 4 lanes of basically 50, 55, 65 mile an hour traffic. So this thing is a really big improvement. And I'm looking forward to checking that out. So those are your updates. But now we're going to get into this dude, John Rieber, and his idea that was so bad that it actually turned out to be good. And I'm going to stop sharing. And Larry, you can go ahead and share your slides and start telling us about this. And we'll hear this history, and then we'll have a little discussion about it.
Okay. Thank you, Rodney. Okay, here's my plan. So thank you, Rodney, and everybody for allowing me to do this presentation. I'm going to talk about the Reber Plan, and I want to start by saying when I first learned about this plan several years ago, I literally didn't believe it. It just boggled my mind. But then I thought about the situation 100 years ago when not only was nature and things like tidelands and bays considered just something that need to be tamed and modified for whatever reason people came up with, but that it was also a period of big engineering projects. The Panama Canal was finished in 1914. The O'Shaughnessy Dam in Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite was finished in 1923. The Hoover Dam was in the 1930s. So a project of this magnitude was not really out of bounds compared to others of the time. So what was Reber trying to deal with? Well, number one was the perennial problem of fresh water for the ever-growing Bay Area, as well as for agricultural interests throughout the state. Too much salt water was a concern of salt water flowing upstream and getting into Suisun Bay and the Delta. And those bodies of water were being used as fresh water, and too much salt would cause a problem with industry and agriculture. The problem of traffic into and out of San Francisco was always a concern. And basically just the idea that there was too much bay. Reber considered the bay a geographic mistake. And so he came up with this plan that I will describe for you. The picture there is Reber, located on Treasure Island, obviously after the Bay Bridge was built, and pointing out to somebody apparently part of his plan for the South Bay. So let's talk about, oops, got ahead of myself a little bit. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So let's talk about his plan. The basic part of it was 2 dams across San Francisco Bay, one from Richmond to San Rafael in the North Bay, and the other from San Francisco to Oakland in the South Bay. As a result of those dams, there would be 2 freshwater lakes in the north and in the south. And all that fresh water would be used for agriculture, industrial development, population growth in the area, and also for that concern of salt water going upstream into Suisun Bay and further on. In addition, he was proposing to fill tidelands and actually fill part of the bay, as you see in the red here. And the proposals for using some of this land sort of changed over time, but industrial growth, more ports, a new airport, military bases, you know, whatever was needed at the time when he was promoting this, which was over several decades, as we'll talk about. The way the water would flow is there would be a ship channel from the northern lake down, cut through the East Bay, through all that filled land, and down into the Southern Bay or the Southern Lake. And there would be 6 ship locks in the center of the landfill there, which should allow ships to traverse between what remained of San Francisco Bay, the saltwater portion, and the freshwater portion of his plan there. So the water would flow, as you can tell, down from the Sierra Nevada through the upper bays and through this ship channel into the lower lake, and also into a channel that would take the water back east to the Central Valley and even down to California. So this was a plan that they imagined was almost an infinite source of fresh water. So they were not only going to solve the Bay Area's freshwater problems, but problems elsewhere in California. And finally, the transportation aspect was the fact that this southern dam was 2,000 feet wide. It would have 32 lanes of car traffic, plus space for railroads. So it would facilitate people coming in and out of San Francisco. So who is for and against this plan? Over time, that changed a little bit, but basically San Francisco was in favor of this plan. The San Francisco port would still be on saltwater, directly accessible through the Golden Gate. So the plan didn't really affect them from that point of view. The Central Valley farmers thought, of course, it would be great to get all that fresh water. Businesses thought that the freshwater supplies and the filled-in land would allow for industrial growth. And labor leaders figured if business is growing, there'd be more jobs, and that was good too. Not surprisingly, Oakland and the East Bay cities were not so sure about this. This would put the Oakland port and other ports behind those locks and really make traffic to them more difficult. The state of California evaluated this, and pretty much during and after World War II came out against it. They decided that it would be too expensive. The northern dam might cause flooding of the delta during the wet season, and during the dry season, there might not be as much water as people predicted. It would destroy any fisheries in San Francisco Bay and the salt ponds that were very prevalent in the South Bay area. And there was also a joint Army-Navy board, which was controlled the Bay Area infrastructure during and after World War II for defense reasons. And at the time after World War II, they were actually evaluating proposals for a second bay crossing somewhat south of the current Oakland San Francisco Bay Bridge. And as part of that, they considered the Reber Plan, even though it wasn't a bridge, but it was another or an expansion of travel between the two sides of the bay there. And they came to the conclusion that the plan would, quote, result in a dislocation of industry, is economically infeasible, and is untenable from the standpoint of navigation and national defense. So they were against it, California was against it, so on and so forth. The card pictured here on the right was something sent out at some point by Reber. I don't know the exact date, but I suspect it was probably after World War II when he really started promoting it. And he just had the idea that the Bay Area would just be in, heaven after his plan was implemented. So I'll talk a little bit about the chronology and how this happened. The idea of a saltwater barrier was actually discussed as early as the 1880s because of that fear of saltwater flowing upriver into Sassoon Bay and further. It was seriously considered in the 1920s and then rejected. But in 1929, John Rieber offered his plan, which included exactly that kind of a barrier. So who is John Rieber? Well, he came to California from Ohio, and he was not an engineer of any sort. He was an actor and a playwright and a producer and a promoter. And he came to California and he traveled around the state producing and promoting plays and things like that, and got to meet a lot of people. And apparently somewhere along the line, he had this idea for the proposal to solve the problems that I talked about. He got some engineers to work with him to make it more concrete and come up with a design. But even though he introduced this in 1929, it was pretty low key throughout the 1930s because the Depression just made it impossible for anything like that to be considered. He didn't unveil it broadly to the public at the Golden Gate International Exhibition in 1940. And as the war in Europe heated up and then the United States joined the war, he enhanced his plan and he talked about it in terms of national defense. For example, adding military bases around the bay and things such as that. And after the war, when the Cold War started and people were really afraid of atomic bombs, he even talked about the fact that his very broad dam with the 32 lanes of traffic would be useful in case of atomic attack, that it would allow people to leave the peninsula in a hurry and go inland. And this was seriously one way that he promoted it. But as you saw on the previous slide, pretty much everybody in California was now against it. And Reber had but one avenue left to him, and he went to Congress. And in 1949, he promoted it and he got the Senate to send a committee out to San Francisco to learn about the plan. And the next year, Congress actually funded a study of the plan. Reber pushed for the plan of building a physical model of the bay, which he expected would show the benefits of his plan. And Congress indeed funded that in 1950, but because of the Korean War, that didn't get built and started up until 1957. Reber was still promoting it, and until the day he died in 1960, he was convinced that the Bay model would show it would work and his plan would be implemented. Such was not the case, however. I think, first of all, when he passed away, I mean, he was like a one-man promotion machine for the thing, and I suspect it would have died of its own accord after that. But in 1963, the Army Corps of Engineers, which had built the Bay model and was doing the testing, came out with its report and said this was infeasible by any frame of reference. They cited some of the same things that were said in the 1940s. There wasn't enough water to really support this plan. And the southern lake in the summer would be a giant evaporation pond. And I would add there wouldn't even be salt at the bottom of the pond to be harvested. You know, it'd be a total waste. So that in effect was the end of the Reber Plan, officially not until 1963. But it was really also part of the changing mentality that started after World War II. And people began to look down on these big kind of plans and begin to think about the environment. The Save the Bay organization started in 1961 to regulate bay fill, and the pollution in the bay was already being regulated. So the Reber Plan was already obsolete, but it hung on as a result of Congress's study until 1963. So that's my story. Thank you very much for allowing me to share it.
Yeah, and thank you, Larry. Oh, by the way, I should mention Larry is a docent with the Diane Edwards Wildlife Refuge. And, this is like really important background. Now, I just have to think like, we had been doing so much to damage the bay and kind of just slowly filling, all this fill going in, all this pollution, all this degradation. But this dramatic plan really kind of changed everything by it was so shocking that it may have actually led to a lot of the advocacy that we've seen since then. And, you wouldn't say it's directly the cause of like the Save the Bay organization or movement, but it's certainly related. So what do you think, Larry? How much do we owe John Rieber a debt of gratitude?
Well, there's certainly something to be said for that. So I think it was just part of the whole idea that by the 1950s and 1960s, people were saying, hey, wait a minute, and the presence of this plan may have really helped to scare some people into action to literally save the bay.
I mean, it's real, I don't know why, but I saw the map and I just couldn't even conceive of the idea that these were giant dams. But it was really the Christmas card that did it to me. In fact, why don't you show the Christmas card again?
Sure.
Because the Christmas card, I was like, and it's like joy. It's a joyous thing, and that's what really made me realize. Oh, he just thought like putting a gigantic 32-lane highway between Oakland and San Francisco on top of a dam was going to be a good thing, And I want to ask, actually, we've got, folks from 350 Bay Area, you can't really blame John Rieber for not understanding the carbon impact that this would have had. But what are your thoughts on that? What would this mean for us today if it had been built?
Well, go ahead, Mary.
Oh, it's just, knowing what Save the Bay is a lot about these days is about marshland and building, creating marshland and creating habitat to minimize the impact of stormwater. This is the absolute opposite, right? This would create, of course, John Rieber didn't know anything about climate change. Maybe it was a twinkle in somebody's eye. Certainly we were moving in that direction, but I don't even think, I think about Jimmy Carter putting on the sweater and lowering the thermostat. So there was some information some time ago that climate change was a thing, but I don't think it was on Reber's mind.
Yeah. And then I think, I was born 2 years after the guy died, and so now all the, 60 years has gone by, and in 60 years from now, I wonder like what people will think of the ideas we had, like what will be the Reber plan that they look back on in 2090? What are we getting so wrong? So it's really humbling, makes you realize, other thoughts?
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it represents some of the engineering hubris that we often have. I look at that 32-lane highway bridging between Alameda or Oakland and San Francisco, and immediately my mind goes to not just what if you could fill that up with cars and they were going, what would be the climate impact of that? But what would those cars do once they got to the other side? It doesn't actually even make sense, because you can't fill up a bridge with 16 lanes of cars going in one direction and dump them onto city streets. There wouldn't be anywhere for them to go. So it would just be, as I put in the text, it would have ended up just being a huge parking lot. And and it seems like all too often people get grandiose ideas about how to re-engineer the world without thinking through basics. Basics of how everything relates to everything else, whether it's cars relating to where they're trying to go, or it's the climate impacts of taking out the wetlands.
Yeah, it's also interesting. The guy, his background was in show business, and when you put show business people in leadership positions, it can be pretty bad.
I don't think anybody put him there. I think he put himself there.
That's a good point. Yeah, he actually never got the real power. Back then they were too sensible to let those guys run with the ball, right?
Yeah.
I keep seeing this as something akin to the channelization of water in Southern California. And this is channelization on a major scale that I don't think has ever been tried anywhere. And the consequences of that in a drought period like now, or for any period with water shortages that we have, it's just shocking to think about how that would have impacted species and wildlife habitats, aside from and in addition to the climate impacts of having 32 lanes of cars going anywhere, or the loss of wetlands. And that idea, it was so common in that era, wasn't it? This is Hoover Dam on steroids.
It's 32 lanes, and that if you'd said, hey, you mind if like a couple of those are a bike lane, they would have gone crazy. We cannot go down to 30 lanes. Sorry, that would make me 3 minutes late to work.
Yeah. Hey, Rodney, I'm sorry to admit, but I forgot my last slide about the Bay model. Can I show that?
Show us the Bay model. And
Yeah.
I did put the show notes has a link to the site that you shared on the Bay model. We had this idea that we might want to like do a show about the Bay model in the future, because the Bay model is very cool. I'm just curious, how many people have been to the Bay model? I have, but it's been a very long time, and it's open again. I know that. So let's do this, folks. Let's have an in-person Baytrail, if we can pull this off, Baytrail Confidential event at the Bay model, and then we'll do a show on Zoom about it.
Excellent.
So Larry, thanks. It's always great having you on Baytrail Confidential, and also I've had a great time hanging out with you on the Baytrail. So Paco's never been to the Baytrail model, or the Bay model. It's not the Baytrail model, but we're getting a little grandiose.
I haven't been there too, Rodney.
You haven't?
Haven't been there too. Never been there.
Well, we'll have to remedy that, Paco.
Rodney, notice the comment from Karen Kay. She's a volunteer there.
Oh,
And
is
they
that
would
right?
Love
Oh.
to have you at an event to the Bay model.
Oh, there you go. Karen, thank you. Thank
Hi.
you. We will talk.
Absolutely.
My people will call your people.
You have people?
Yeah, it's me, right? The entire staff of Baytrail Confidential right here. Great. Well, let's move on. Thank you again, Larry, for scaring us and with that thing. And I'll mention again, this is the link for the show notes. I'll also put it in chat again. And you can find the link. Karen, we used the link to the Baytrail model that was from the city of Sausalito that seemed to have really good information. But if you want to throw anything else in the chat, go ahead. And I can also add that to the website. So we're now going to move on to something else that's in Marin, the Corte Madera Marsh. And I'll be honest, I was planning to do this show and I said, oh, I think we're just going to do a general show and not talk about any place in particular. And Lee and my wife, Sarah, both said, you can't do that. You always have to spotlight a place. And I think they were totally right about that because, I don't know, it's just fun to explore these places. So, oh, and I have to tell you the story about going to the Corte Madera Marsh because we're going to a wedding. My nephew's getting married this weekend. He's the first of our nephews to get married. Very exciting. Sarah went shopping for a dress at a place in Marin called The Village. And I just, hard for me to go inside. I hate shopping and I hate going into shopping centers. So I hung out in the car and then I kind of looked at the map and saw, oh, wow, there's like this whole kind of marsh right around here. So here's where the shopping center is. And I was like, oh, I think I'll check that out. And this Shorebird Marsh is a place that's actually, I think it's been recently restored with trails. There is some recent activity there. And I had a really good time walking around there. And then Sarah and I went back there this past weekend. So it's basically you'll see these two P's are parking areas. One has only a few parking spots. It is the better place to park. And then this is actually the mall, but the mall allows people to park there for the Baytrail and Marsh access. So those are the parking areas. Here they are again. This one only has 6 spots, but I'll tell you, we went there on Sunday, on the weekend, and there were still spots available. So it's the only people that are going here are really either to sit on some benches that are right there at the parking area or to go walking on these trails. And then over here by the mall, in case this one isn't available, there's tons of spots. You'd never run out of spots. And I am going to mention public transit. So I know the cars are not the only ways to get to these places, but here are the big takeaways. First of all, it's also known as the Shorebird Marsh, totally flat. So you're not going to do any hill climbing. Abundant bird life, really, especially this time of year, really exciting. The parts I went on were packed dirt, but there are some paved areas. I don't think the best areas are not paved, but if you are in a mobility device, you would still have a very good time there navigating the paved areas. It's a great way to avoid going to the nearby mall. And dogs are permitted, but they must be on a leash. And that's especially important this time of year because this is when the young birds are being hatched and stuff. So here is the transportation. There are some Golden Gate transit buses that go close to this. There's one from San Francisco, the 130 bus, but there's also multiple buses that go through San Rafael and other parts of Marin. It's only 1 mile on foot from Larkspur Ferry, especially with this new Corte Madera bridge that I told you about. So that's kind of cool. And then the large parking lot at the Village or the very small parking lot at Shorebird Marsh, both good places to park. And this is what it looks like on all trails. So basically you're going out into these areas. Here's where the parking would be that we went to. You could walk out this way or walk all the way around. And then this is like this spit of land that it's like a balance beam. You go to the very end of this and you're kind of looking right out at San Quentin. But there's lots of like lakes in here for birds, and you'll see a lot of bird life in there. And I found these great pictures taken by Betsy Crawford. I always try to get permission from photographers and send emails, and I sent Betsy one, and she sent me a very delightful reply. So I congratulate her on taking these great pictures. But this is like gives you a sense of what you'd be seeing if you go out there. And I'm not promising you'll see a Ridgeway rail, but you might hear them. And so there's Ridgeway rails there. We saw some beautiful white pelicans. I think maybe this is a good time of year for that. I think it's a shoveler. We saw a bunch of them, some egrets. Help me there. Is this a blackneck? Is this a stilt or is it an avocet? I think it's a stilt. Stilt. Thank you. Thank you.
Black
Larry.
neck stilt, yeah.
Blackneck stilt, which I just love those. Some little ducklings. There's another shot of the pelicans. They're just so cool. I think this is like a blackneck stilt chick. And again, congratulations to Betsy on getting these great shots. This is a night heron, and we were at the Oakland Museum today having lunch, and all these night herons were right around there. But there's such great animals to look at. And here's another shot of what you would see. It is important to stay on the trails. You'll see a lot of signs saying, please don't go off the trails. This is protected bird habitat. So respect that. Beautiful. Is it an egret or a heron? I always get.
It's an egret.
Thank you.
It's a great egret.
I think I should always have you, Larry, backing me up on this stuff. And I did steal Betsy's picture for my background. So that's the Corte Madera Marsh. We always want to give you some place to check out. I guess the other thing I'll say about this place is, like so many of these places, it's a place I'd gone by many, many times. You know, you go right by on 101. If you're heading for the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge from the Golden Gate Bridge, you would go right by this place. You know, I was kind of shocked that I didn't know it, you know, and now I really love this place. So it's always the takeaway here is, you know, if you explore places on the Bay Trail, you're not going to be disappointed. Anybody among the guests want to add anything about Corte Madera Marsh? Any of you guys have experience with it? I think Lee, you said it would be new for you too, but go ahead.
I'll just say that this is featured on the rides that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. It's the end of the ride around the Paradise Loop. And so it's an opportunity to see it up close and personal. We certainly saw a lot of bird life.
Yeah, and you're right. It is like the gateway to the Paradise Loop. So, and especially with that new bridge, if you were, say, coming over the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge and going to do the Paradise Loop, in the old days, you would go on the other side of 101 and go through the town. I guess the town of Larkspur. Is that right? Or is it Corte Madera? You'd go through that town. And you would miss all this. So it's kind of cool that it's more accessible. Oh, sorry. I had another bird I needed to share with you. I think this is another night heron. All right, but let's talk about this road to a livable climate and all these great bike routes that Linda, you and Marianne have put together. You know, even showing me places I haven't been to. We've got that. So if you want more information about these rides that we're going to show you, here's the link. You can't click on it on the screen. So maybe someone can type that into the chat. Also, it is on my show notes page. If you go to that, you'll find that link. But boy, you guys have been busy putting together all these different events.
And we've gotten to do the rides too. So we put together the ride, and then we have to do the test ride. So that's been really splendid.
Yeah. And the reason we kind of connected, and I gave some input on the San Francisco ride.
Indeed.
And I'm also actually going to be speaking at Heron's Head on the San Francisco ride. We'll be talking a little bit about Baytrail Confidential and how we've come to know these places, and also how important they are for what we call active transportation. You know, people doing their transportation on the Bay Trail, and this isn't just recreation.
So I think there's so much to say about this. As you can see from the slide here, the ride in Marin that I just mentioned is the Paradise Loop, and it has much of the Bay Trail featured, but so does the San Francisco ride, and it was stunning. So thank you, Rodney, for all of your help in helping us visualize what that ride might look like and introducing us to the Heron Heads Park. That was incredible. We had never been down there before. The Napa ride is even, believe it or not, going to touch on the Bay Trail because we're going to be reaching the headlands via the wetlands in American Canyon via that new route that you pointed out earlier in the show, which makes it possible for us to get from Napa down to American Canyon without having to hit Highway 29 and even all the way down to Vallejo. So ultimately we'll be able to head to Vallejo and take the ferry in, and it will really improve our active transportation options.
Yeah, and let's take a look at some of those maps. So this is what you were just talking about with the Paradise Loop, and this is the area that we were looking at. This is where the Corte Madera Marsh is, and then the Paradise Loop is, if anyone who has not done that, it is really one of the prime biking places. What else can we say about it? It's just fabulous territory.
Well, and it also points to one of the things that Marianne and I really noticed while we've been scouting all of the rides for this event is the incredible improvement in bicycle infrastructure that has taken place throughout the Bay Area. We have ridden on more well-marked bike lanes, separated from traffic, greenways. The Baytrail is part of that system, of course, but there's so much more infrastructure that makes it so much more welcoming for cyclists and for hikers. So that was super impressive.
I think that's really one of the things that we highlight in the East Bay route, which actually begins on the Bay Trail and makes its way through the from the Greenway in there we go, right? So we start out in Richmond. This is completely doable by public transportation. So we start at the Richmond BART, make our way down the Bay Trail, and you can see, so the whole first portion of this is along the Bay Trail. And then we make our way, well, a little bit off the Bay Trail. There we go. So all along the Bay Trail until we come to a little bit of a slip until we go to a greenway. And that's where, I think that's where, yeah, that's where the arrow is now. And then the greenway leads us to an area, a street in Berkeley, which has been improved and improved and improved, and that's Milvia. So as you come down south along that Berkeley Trail, we go along that, and that's one of the speakers, and that's one of the different things about our rides, I should say, than other rides where you just don't put on your Lycra and ride. We have speakers along the routes on all of the trails. So here in the East Bay, we have speakers addressing improvements in infrastructure to make it safe for bicyclists, for other modes of active transportation. So they really become complete streets. When we make our way down to Oakland, we have another prime example in Oakland of Telegraph Avenue. And you can go as you go from north to south along Telegraph Avenue, there are several areas where you see improvement and then more improvement and more separation. So 70% of people who have been polled say they would bicycle if they felt safe. So this is a demonstration of making it safe to really help to transition people who are able to from automobiles to active transportation.
Yeah,
And,
I went on Milvia just not too long ago, and I was shocked how they've made it one way in the most dangerous part, and now there's like bike lanes on both sides with lots of room.
And to answer the question in the chat, if you go to the website, you will see each of the maps that we've included here, as well as the mileage for each of the routes. So the route that I've just been talking about is the shortest of the routes because it's going in the city. So we need to stop at stop signs and stop at stop lights. So it's pretty much urban. San Francisco has the advantage of having areas, as you can see, along the north area of the bay and through the park. So there's a wonderful mix in the San Francisco route of along the bay and then through the park and through some of the safest streets where there have been improvements. Linda, what's the name? Is that Page Street that
Yeah,
we?
Page Street,
Page Street as a
That's Page-
safe, yes,
Slow Street.
safe,
It's-
slow street. Mhm.
Right.
Also Page Street is where I do my Haight Ashbury tour. So I've been, just like for multiple reasons, it's a great thing.
Excellent. Yes, and somebody put in the chat the wiggle. Yes, we go through the wiggle. And then, and as you can see, as we head south on the San Francisco route, we go all the way down to this splendid place that Rodney turned us on to, through Hunters Point and all the way down. And that was quite a delightful.
Yeah, and let me just say,
revelation.
the one person I promise I will be talking about at Heron's Head will be Marie Harrison, who we talked about a month ago, the Bayview Hunters Point activist who helped get the PG&E plant shut down there, which is one reason why that's such a delightful area.
Excellent.
Indeed, it's quite remarkable. I wanted to add a couple other things. Thanks, Marianne did a great job of kind of summarizing some of the really important features. Our vision of this ride from 350 Bay Area is that there are so many people and so many organizations doing incredible work for climate resiliency, climate solutions, thinking, and having fun with active transportation, cycling, walking, and other means of non-motorized transportation. But if you have an electric bike, you are more than welcome to participate, because we also view electric bikes as a really critical step to getting more cars off the road for so many of the close to home chores and commutes, but also for recreational purposes. So I also wanted to point out that this ride takes place over 2 weekends, as you'll see on Rodney's slide and also on the website. And a few of the features are really important projects that are timely, such as the crossing of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge using a bike lane that is currently under threat of being removed because there isn't enough bike traffic on it, according to the powers that be, to sustain it. So we want to show up in mass and cross this bridge on our bicycles and demonstrate how important it really is. And that's just one of many examples of how being there will not just be learning about things that are happening around the Bay Area and meeting groups, but also taking part in climate activism and bicycle and active transportation activism.
You mentioned e-bikes, and Tom Lent commented on that. Tom is going to be the speaker on the East Bay ride about, I believe, about e-bikes, right, Tom?
That's right. I'll be riding one that day and talking about both, how they work, how they fit in active transportation, and some of the policy work that we're doing to make them more accessible to low-income people and things like that. So I'm looking forward to participating.
Well, I'll be participating in the San Francisco ride, and so I'm not just talking, I'm going to be riding it. And I love riding in these areas. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and a great way to dramatize the incredible assets we have in the Bay Area with all this new bike infrastructure. Linda, I think you talked about the safety being such an important issue, and we always talk on this show about what I call the 10-year-old standard. Like, can you make something safe enough for families with like a 10-year-old to feel safe in these places? I think in a lot of these places, it really has gotten to that level where you can be pretty comfortable riding even with a 10-year-old kid.
I think that's true. One of the rides that feels very safe is the Sonoma County ride, which doesn't involve the Baytrail per se, but it certainly, the more people ride in any of these areas, the more they become aware of the opportunities and the possibilities. And what Sonoma County has done is really installed a number of beautiful dedicated trails that anyone can ride safely. There are no cars in sight, and they're well marked, and it's the wave of the future.
Yep, this is gonna be a great event. So thank you, Marianne and Linda, for telling us about it. I think we'll move on, but again, I want to encourage people to go to the show notes, which I think I have another slide with the URL. Go to that site and you can get links to the Road to a Livable Climate and the other things we're talking about. Marianne and Linda, any last things you'd like to add?
I just want to thank you for including us in this. It was such a treat to meet you and to meet everyone who's involved with this show. I certainly am going to be recommending it to other people who are interested in the Bay Area, because we're all, we all recognize what a unique place we live in, and this is a really important way to learn more about it and have fun.
Yeah, and I want to be more involved with 350 Bay Area. I feel like we are very much aligned. We all want the same thing.
Well, Rodney, and I want to thank you because it's been this whole show has been a tremendous asset all through the pandemic, when it wasn't even safe to go out, by plugging into your show and, oh yes, we could actually do that. Maybe we could wear a mask and get out and do it. So what you have put together here has been just a godsend, and I'm delighted to be able to participate in this little way, and hope that if it's piqued the interest of anyone on the show, go to the website, go to our website, sign up, join us. It'll be fun, interesting, and great to have you.
Yeah, the one thing we didn't mention is, like, 350, in case anyone doesn't know, is an organization that's dedicated to fighting climate change. And 350, I think that stands for the parts per
million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Yep.
And we're well beyond that, but it's a goal.
Yep.
It's an aspiration.
And I'll tell you, a good way to fight climate change is to make your travel more local. And that is definitely something we've advocated from the very start with this show. And on that topic, let's talk about some local travel that is going to be happening very soon. I am joined by my partners in crime on this, Tom Lent and Mark Freiberg. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for agreeing to go last but not least. This is our, this is, by the way, a teaser, because we're going to be back in the June show telling you how this whole thing went. But we're doing the abode, this is the very first time in world history that anyone has ever done this that we're aware of. Around the bay in one day expedition without using a car. We're going to be using all these different forms of transportation. And forget that. Oh, we're going the wrong direction. That's what's going on. This is going to be the route we're taking, and we'll tell you a little more about it. But we're going to be going counterclockwise around the bay. We could have gone clockwise, but we decided not to. And we are going to, this history is going to be made on May 12th. So that's a week from tomorrow. And how do you sign up for abode? Well, we're going to put it out there, and there is a limiting factor that we'll talk about in a second, because we're taking all these different forms of transportation with our bicycles. And the first one is the Vine Transit bus will be going from Del Norte. It only takes three bicycles at a time. So we're a little limited by that. The other forms of transportation actually would be fine. So maybe we need to do it where we just say, hey, everyone meets us in Napa. And this is like the very first, maybe the beta test of this whole thing. But here's a table that's kind of showing you what we're doing. And we are basically starting at 7:20 in the morning, bicycling to El Cerrito del Norte BART station. Then we are going to be taking the Vine, I think they call it Vine Transit bus to Napa, and then setting off from Napa by bike to Petaluma, because this corridor, there's really no other way to get across the North Bay. There's no public transit that would do that for us. It's 31 miles of riding. We could go on Highway 37, but we're not crazy, so we're not going to do that. And then we're going to take the wonderful SMART train, the Sonoma Marin train that goes kind of parallel to Highway 101. We'll be taking that from Petaluma to Larkspur. We had thought about biking from Larkspur to San Francisco, but then we thought, nah, let's do another form of transportation. We're going to take the ferry, and we'll be getting in. This will be a little bit of a tight connection, but we're getting in to the ferry building, and then we have about 14 minutes. This is that this thing is happening at 4:06. We found out it's actually at 4:04. We have 14 minutes to get off the ferry and get to the train station. But don't worry, if we miss that train, we have another one coming in like 30 minutes. We will go down all the way to San Jose, and then we will bike in San Jose to the BART station down there, Berryessa BART, which is only like 4 miles. And then we will take BART back to El Cerrito Plaza and bike to my house. And we think it's going to take about 12 hours, 40 miles biking, 170 miles of transit, 210 miles total. We do not know how many burritos will be consumed, but we think it's going to be a lot. How many drinking fountains we'll encounter. We'll keep an eye out for that. I think we're allowed to have beer on some of these forms of transportation. So that may be a factor. It's going to be a very long day for me. Yes, it will, Paco. And we'll be taking lots of photos that we will share with you guys on the June show. So this will be one of the topics on the June show. The other topic is going to be Heron's Head. We're going to be talking more about Heron's Head. But let me just ask Tom, Mark, I thought this was my crazy idea, but you guys both were like very enthusiastic about signing on to this thing. Let me ask you first, Mark, what did you like about this idea?
Well, honestly, I've always not only enjoyed biking, but I've also been a fan of railroads, and there's plenty of railroad in here. In fact, to Paco's comment that this is going to be a long day, that may be true, but for most of it, somebody else is driving.
That's true. What about you, Tom? What are your thoughts on this?
You're here. Yes, I agree with all of that. I'm really looking forward to trying out the smart train, which is the only piece of this that I have never done. And just the chutzpah of getting all the way around without a car in one day was just too delightful to me. And it seemed like a great warm up to the 350 ride and a demonstration of all the great modes of transportation that we have around here and how they can be connected together. So why not?
Yeah, I would love to see more people doing this, and I think we'll have to think about that. We have talked to members of the news media about this idea. Nobody's. I think they want to see us do it first before they possibly write about it. But those contacts have been made, and the cool thing about the smart train is you're actually allowed to eat on the smart train, and they have tables. It's actually very civilized. So I think we're going to be getting some burritos in Petaluma and consuming them on the smart train. Other thoughts? Anybody? Any other thoughts, Mark or Tom, on this whole thing?
I kind of feel like one of the Apollo astronauts, and then looking at the three of us here on the TV screen, it's 3 white guys. So I guess it's sort of like that, unfortunately, but we'll get some diversity in future rides.
You have to work on that.
Yeah, we really do need to work on that. So I hadn't thought about that, but like I said, this is just the beta test. We hope to do more of this. Also, Tom, you helped me do my circumnavigation last August, the 6-day ride around the entire bay, and I'm thinking I want to do that again this year too. So
yeah, I'm thinking we may have to do kind of a BART bike version of Baytrail Confidential, where we work on all of the different places that one can go from BART station to BART station, using BART to make an interesting ride. I've, done things of going out to the canal trails by taking the 2 different branches of BART that go over the East Bay Hills and taking BART out to Pleasant Hill and then riding to Vallejo and then taking the Vallejo ferry back there. Just so many different variants on this that we can do that are less than 12 hours of major circumnavigation, but really open up different parts of the Bay Area to active transportation without having to haul bikes on your car anywhere. And it's, it's really a delightful way to get around.
yeah, I really like that.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Is that Marianne?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. To connect by bicycle and by active transportation from one amazing place in the Bay Area to another, and where you can't cycle, like the ferry, the end of the bridge to bridge to San Francisco to ferry back to the East Bay, because there's not a bridge yet.
You know,
Splendid idea.
I mean, one thought, we are being a little bike centric in this. You know, Ethel's not with the, Ethel was busy and not able to join us tonight, but she's the kind of the hiking advocate. And I kind of think that there are going to be hiking things that you can do that also involve public transit, like a hike that has a train or a bus or even a ferry ride as part of it. So you know, we are kind of, it's easier to do this stuff with bikes, but I do think maybe we will be including hiking in all this too. Like, could you go around the entire bay on foot without using a car, and use transit to get to all your points at some point?
Funny, it's interesting that you brought that up. I can't even remember what year it was now, but it's probably been almost more than 10 years. There was a fella named Kurt Schwabe who actually got a lot of media press about it, who essentially did the entire Bay Trail in 30 days was his goal, essentially. So he took transit to different parts of the Bay Trail, walked it, and in a day as far as he could, and he would stop, get back on transit, go home, and then he would start again where he ended the previous day. Essentially, he actually successfully did it. He took a whole bunch of great photos on it, so it can be done. It does take a lot of planning, though.
So you wouldn't be making history, but you'd still have a really good time.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, I had when I was doing my exploration of Bayview Hunters Point, I went with this guy who wrote a book called For the Love of Cities, and it was about like how he loves cities. And I said, well, I think the best way to love a city is to explore it either by bike or on foot. Like that's how you really get to know a place. And if you drive around a city in a car, it's not the same thing. Not to pick on cars, but
Couldn't agree more.
yes,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so we are car bashing. I think we should probably wrap this up. And we do always every month have a Serena selection. Serena wanted to point out American Canyon. Serena is the one who sends out the Baytrail map cards when we have a contest, but nobody entered the contest this month, so we actually don't have one. But American Canyon is a fabulous place, and we've already talked about it earlier because it's part of the Road to a Livable Climate ride, the Napa ride. So she was talking about how she loves this area of the wetlands. Another place called Landfill Loop that's actually a fabulous place. And then this new connection that we were talking about actually goes right in here. And then if you're on a bike, you would come maybe Green Island Road down to the Bay Trail there. But this is a really great area. And we will definitely be doing a show on American Canyon at some point, not in the not too distant future, because it is one of my favorite places. And here's a great picture of the railway bridge that connects American Canyon to Cuttings Wharf on the other side of the Napa River. Great place. And these are the Baytrail map cards that you would win if you entered the I need to get you guys to send me more photos so we can have another photo contest. And I guess I will try to get that going again so we can give away map cards, because not everybody has a set, right? And here are a couple of Paco, Paco, you have your Baytrail map cards. With Paco won them for being the most awesome audience member of all time. I think I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I think you are the runaway great audience member, Paco, without parallel. But we always conclude the show with happy trails. So here's happy trails.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about about the clouds if we're together. Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Until we meet again.
All right, so that's the official show, but now we like to do Q&A, and also want to say some thank yous. Especially want to thank my wife, Sarah, who is always very helpful with this program. Midnight Kitchen provide the music at the for the slideshow, and they're making more. We're going to get more music from them, some pretty cool stuff soon. And then Jason Myers, we just heard him. But yeah, we want to do Q&A. I saw a couple of questions in chat that I want us to address. Since it just came through a second ago, Linda, you were asking how often are the Baytrail map cards updated? Lee, do you know an answer to that?
I was just typing in a response. So it's every few years as significant changes happen essentially, and it's a little bit based off of our funding as well. But the most recent set was updated sometime in the middle or late part of 2020, so it's pretty up to date.
Great.
And then there's the website, right?
Right.
In the website, if you've got a smartphone, it's pretty high quality. You can really use it right off your phone, and I think those are getting updated more frequently, aren't they, Lee?
Well, the card set maps that are online are the same ones that are you'll see in the map sets that get sold and given away as prizes. But there's a Baytrail Navigation Map, which is going to be pretty much the most up-to-date one. If you've got a smartphone or a laptop, you can use it, and you can really zoom in on little spaces so you can see what the area looks like.
Makes me think maybe I should get on my website just like some of these updates, like the Napa, that new Napa link, which is not going to be considered part of the Baytrail, but it's to me very Baytrail adjacent. So maybe we need to do that. There was a question really early in the show for Larry about, I think, bathrooms at Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge, and I didn't want to bring it up then because it didn't really have to do with the John Rieber plan, but I'm always really big on drinking fountains and bathrooms. So I guess, did you see that question, Larry?
Yes, I did. I did put an answer in the chat.
Oh, you
just
did.
to make sure that people would see that. But yes, there are portable restrooms both at our Alvisa facility and at the Fremont facility.
Yep, I think I've used them. Maybe that's TMI, but I'm on the Baytrail a lot, and I'm a human being, so it's really important to have open bathrooms. So I always like to call on Paco and ask Paco, what did you think of the show?
Engaging for me, apparently. Right.
What's
Love
that?
this show.
Yeah, what do you think?
Very intriguing too for me.
Good, and I'm glad you're rooting for us on our abode. I wanted to say Adobe, the abode expedition.
I was like reading all of your flashcards from the Bay Area Confidential.
Oh, and yeah, those are good. Ron, you've told us about construction going on in Alviso. You're right, some of the trails aren't open. Larry and I actually talked about that, and we decided I decided not to make that part of the show, but I think there's some levee work going on, Larry, isn't that right?
That's right. They're strengthening and increasing the height of some of the levees, and at the moment that closes off one of the trails, one of the actually major trails. I don't know how long that will be closed. I would say probably at least several more months.
Yep, sometimes these things happen and they need to be done. We get new stuff.
It'll be great after it's all done. We just have to wait patiently.
And there's still plenty of other great stuff in Alviso. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Need to get down there. Other thoughts? Oh, is there any way to, oh, this is a great question, Eileen. Is there any way to hike to Drawbridge? And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that, but Larry?
Yes, no, you can, well, normally you can hike to a point from which you can see it. But that is part of the trail that is closed right now, so no, but normally you cannot get to Drawbridge. It is just too dangerous. It is a marsh. And the only way to hike to it would be hiking on railroad tracks, which is not a good idea.
No, Baytrail Confidential is staunchly against that. And it's particularly in that would be extremely dangerous because that train is fast.
Yes, and it's also illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal. We do not advocate or condone trespassing.
Yes, but as Ronald just pointed out, if you ride one of those trains that goes through there, you're riding right through the middle of it, such as the Altamont Express and the Ace train, and anything that goes from San Jose up across the East Bay goes right through Drawbridge.
So there you go. That's got to be another ambition. I've never taken that train, believe it or not. So I think I need to do that.
And the other thing that I tell people is Google Earth. You can use Google Earth and get a satellite view, which zooms down pretty closely, and you can see it that way as well.
No one's ever been hit by a train using Google Earth. At least, well, I guess you could if you were in the wrong place. But yeah, so you're not gonna, we really don't think you should consider visiting Drawbridge in person. Other questions, other thoughts?
Rodney, excuse me, your show is coming up on Monday, your art viewing.
We were going to have an art viewing adventure this Monday, and it's going to be great. At the moment, I've drawn a blank on what it's going to be.
I'm sure Nikki will be hosting this.
That's
about Roy Orbison.
Yeah, these are other programs that I am involved with. So anyone who gets my Friday email will have information on all those things. So thanks for that, Paco. Thanks for plugging that. Anybody else want to unmute and make a comment or ask a question? We're just keeping you guys in suspense about how this abode expedition will go. So stay tuned. I'll probably put something on my blog about that.
I will go to Rodney one of these days.
What's that again? Say that again, Paco.
When the pandemic is over, I'm gonna go walking when the pandemic is over.
Well, I'm really looking forward to it. Like Paco, you and I have spent a lot of time together on Zoom, and we've never met in person. And I would love to be able to connect with you in person.
Yeah, Rodney, I met Laura last year at the book.
We'll find a way,
Laura.
Paco. Oh, yes, thank you, sweetie. Neri Oxman, this is this really great exhibition that's at SF MoMA right now. It's actually closing soon, so you're going to want to go see it. But it's Oxman Architects, and it actually ties in with some of the things we've talked about. It's architecture for a much more sustainable world, using all kinds of interesting materials. So join us for that. I really want to thank my guests for coming on the show. It was great having so many of you guys, and we had great topics and even like overlap. So Tom, you're involved with both the abode ride and the in 350 Bay Area. But yeah, thank you to everybody, Marianne, to Linda, Tom, Mark, Larry, and thanks everyone for tuning in. I will be posting.
This is a wonderful program, Rod.
Thank you, Paco.
Art viewing adventures.
That will be great too. So I will take the recording of this, post it on YouTube as I always do, and hopefully many more people will get to see this. If you want to see me on Sunday, June 5th, sign up for that Road to a Livable Climate, and we'll do the ride or just come out to Heron's Head, and we'll see you in person there. So with that, I think I will stop sharing my slides and wish you all very happy trails. Thanks for
Thank
tuning in.
you.
Thanks so much.
See you guys.
Thank you. Stay healthy and
Yeah.
safe.
Good night, everyone.